either put up your hand and speak, or you can write the question into the chat and I'll say it, and Joan will answer. Over to Joan now.
Thanks. So our speaker tonight is Dr. Clos, who is the Executive Director of the United Nations Human Settlements Programme, or UN Habitat. He was also Mayor of Barcelona for 10 years and a medicine graduate who later specialised in public health and epidemiology at the University of Edinburgh. He then joined the Barcelona municipal government as the Director of Public Health in 1979, where he earned a reputation for improving municipal management and for urban renewal projects, and is also widely credited with inspiring far-reaching investment programs for Barcelona. One of the most ambitious was the Barcelona at 22 program, where Dr. Clos received a number of awards, including a gold medal from the RIBA in 1999 for transforming Barcelona. So I'll hand over to our speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to attend the invitation of the Architecture School of the Reading University, and I'm very pleased to share with you my thoughts about the current issues of urbanization and the problems which are related to the future of cities after COVID-19. Just to clarify, I need to say that I was the director of UN Habitat. I am retired since 2 years ago, and now I am relaxing or I'm enjoying life in Barcelona. Just I wanted to say that on relation to urbanization, and especially confronting the post-COVID period, we need to review a little bit of the principles or a little bit of the paradigms that currently we are dealing with in terms of urbanization. If we read what is now being published by authors, thinkers, and urbanists about the future of urbanization after the COVID, I would say that there's a general consensus in two things. The first is that there's a movement of population from the center of the city to the periphery, avoiding the high densities of the center and looking for a less dense part of the urban reality. And the second part of it is that this movement of population is supported thanks to the technology, IT communications, mainly the work at home and the use of Zoom and this kind of new technology. I think that these two ideas are the most common ideas that are coming up in the conversations on the future of urbanization. Decrease density and increased use of technology, for intermediating the relationship between people. There's a variant to that. The most environmental sensitive, they hope that this is going to happen without an increase of sprawl. That instead of an increase of sprawl, hopefully, this redistribution of the density is going to happen in the current urban boundaries or urban land already classified as such. That's to say that hopefully at least this can happen without increase of sprawl, which is seen as a problem for sustainability. Then the form of density in a metropolitan area, instead of having the shape of a bell curve, it's going to have a more rectangular, perhaps less higher curve less higher, more flattened, but in a rectangular distribution of the density. This is what the experts of urbanization are contributing nowadays to the debate of the post-COVID-19 epidemic. But I think that this is not addressing the question in a proper manner, because I think that this is not the main question that we are facing. I think that the society, not just the city, but in general, the modern society is confronting three main challenges. One is climate change or the environmental revolution, or however you want to say it. We need to change the energy mix of the economy, and we need to use a different matrix of energy production. Then one of the challenges is climate change. The second challenge is a social one, and is the control of the increase of inequalities in our society. Or even better than addressing the inequalities, we need to address the effects of inequalities, which are very, painful in our society, and which is generating new political movements, like the resort to authoritarian or populist governments and these kind of things that are challenging the basic roots of our liberal democracy. And now we need to face also on those two challenges of both the climate change and the challenge of inequalities were with us already before the pandemic. And the only thing is that now, on top of these two huge challenges, we need to address the third one. And this third one is to address the panic generated by the pandemic, which is, a very understandable panic, because the pandemic it's killing a lot of people, and therefore we are adding anxiety and additional problems to our already challenging future in urbanization. Then the future of urbanization needs to deal with the three-prong, crises that we are facing. Not only, the already existing two big challenges, but also including now the challenges of post-COVID. But for me, the important question is not the challenge which is due to the panic of the COVID. For me, the difficult ones to address are the two previous ones. Because as epidemiologist, as you have said, I am certain that we will last 1 or 2 years, but the pandemic will be controlled at the end, and in 5 years that would be remembered as something terrible that happened in the 20 and 21 perhaps, but that will be overcome. But what is not going to be easily addressed is the measures that we need to take in relation to the climate change, and the measures that we need to take in relation to the social inequalities, by which we need to elaborate a new social contract. And this is my main point. My main point is that we need to have a new social contract, a renewal of the social contract, that it provided our society, the European society, very good outcomes, at least from the end of the Second World War until the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, when the neoliberal paradigm emerged in our society, and where the new the unwanted consequences of the neoliberal paradigm are producing now the unwanted effects. And these unwanted effects are mainly the worsening of the economic conditions of the middle classes. The European middle classes and the upper side of the working class reached a state of well-being thanks to a generous welfare state that was quite produced a kind of optimistic 30 years of evolution from the 1950 to the 1980, and those period was in general perceived as advancing the well-being of the poor and the middle class, providing education, health, pensions, and housing solutions for many people that increase the perceived well-being of masses of the population. But now, with the crisis of the neoliberal paradigm and with the unwanted effects of the globalization, people it's now losing confidence in the ability of the state to provide a kind of social arrangements that are beneficial for the next generations. For the first time, we are seeing that many people in this upper poor class and middle classes are seeing a future for their future generations, which is less positive or less comfortable than the one that they are enjoying today. And this is something that is undermining the confidence on the state and also the confidence in the the liberal democracy. And then there's no surprise that the people is, lying towards authoritarian government or populist government, in looking for at least somebody that is providing certainties instead of doubts and uncertainties. I think that the cumulative effects of the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, the challenges of the climate change, and the challenges on the future of work and the future of employment, the increased poverty of the middle classes, the real or the imaginary effects of new technology, especially the ones related with artificial intelligence and with all the consequence of robots and these kind of things. Altogether, this cocktail of new ideas is providing a kind of anxiety, or is generating a kind of uncertainty, anxiety, and uneasiness in our society that needs to be canalized. Otherwise, we are risking the stability of the liberal democracy that we were used to, especially from 1950 at least to the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. Then this kind of uncertainties is already retrofitting in a kind of cybernetic retroalimentation, a propensity to not investing in the future and also diminishing the consumption. And in the current economic model, the reduction of investment and the reduction of consumption, which is seen macroeconomically, it's worsening the economic crisis. This is something that is retrofitting the economic crisis. And that is something that should be taken in account, because unless we don't address these psychological perceptions, the crisis could be even worse. Remember that, as Roosevelt said after the 1930 economic crisis, it's the fear itself that was one of the roots of the crisis of 2030, and they needed to go to change the mentality. Of course, it was not the change of mentality that at the end was addressing the consumption problem or the investment problem. Was the Second World War, unfortunately. But now the war is not anymore an expected outcome of the modern society. We now we cannot cope with the atomic war, and therefore there's no going to be a general world war again. And therefore, we need to go deep in the roots of the current issues in order to address a new social contract, which is totally new, because to begin with, we don't know even who are the interlocutors to address this new social contract. Most of the agreement says that if the interlocutors in the 1950 welfare state were capital and work, that they agreed on the welfare state. Now probably the two components of the dialogue should be the middle class with big corporations, with the intermediation as in the under the auspices of, like in the 50s, of the government. But we are now generating this feeling that the government is not anymore legitimated to be the referee of this kind of agreements, because the popularity of governments for its corruptions and inefficiencies have diminished everywhere. It's very different to build up a welfare state after winning, under the popularity of winning a war or losing a war for the sake of it, than to build up a new social contract without such a huge crisis. Therefore, we are, when we understand the behavioral costs and effects in our population on the human, makeup, we need to recognize that we are in a very difficult times in order to prepare for this building up of this new social contract. Although at the same time, everybody agrees that is extremely urgent, and without it, we are not going to solve the problems that we are facing today. Neither the climate change, nor the inequalities, not the social unrest that we are foreseeing. Therefore, it's a very interesting and challenging task that politics have now in the modern society. And on that, I think that what is now relevant is that we need to address the issue of what is the contribution of urbanization to the current situation. How proper urbanization can help to build up the conditions for this new social contract. And here is where architects or urbanists in general should, should take their proper role. And in here also, I think that it's very important that we resort to the basics of our science or of our work. We need to go back to the basics of urbanization. And just to not to lose ourselves in the details or in the periphery of the urban issues. We need to go back to the basics. And to begin with, the definition of urbanization. And to my stance or to my belief, urbanization is about living together in a more or less dense urban fabric with convivialities or living together, residential floor, economic floor for employment, and amenities together with public space. Then we need to make a cocktail, a well-designed and a tasty cocktail, or if you want, a well-tuned symphony of public space that at least should be 50% of the available land in the urban areas, and then 50% the buildable area, where in this 50% of built area, we need to put together a mixture of uses between residential uses, economic uses, and amenities. And also, we need to provide social mix between the rich and the poor in order to avoid segregation. And this cocktail of at least 5 components, residential use, economic use, amenities, floor use, plus the mixture of rich and poor, this cocktail of 5 components need to be acceptable, palatable, and interesting. Otherwise, the urban fabric is going to be, as it is in many parts of the world, a total mess in terms of environmental sustainability, in terms of social sustainability, or in terms of economic sustainability. And then this is the huge contribution that urbanization needs to put on the table of this new social contract. And this is not easy because not many people is in agreement on this issue. To begin with, there's no agreement on densities. And in fact, we know already that the density that is being built now in the world, it's not enough to provide economies of scale or economies of agglomeration. You know that one of the outcomes of good and proper urbanization is the increased productivity of the city due to the proximity of the factors of production, mainly, financial capital, physical capital, and human capital, which delivers goods and services at a reasonable cost. And this is only obtained through mainly obtained in the urban settings by the proximity of the factors, which if we listen to the experts like Jeffrey West and others which are writing about these issues, is achieved through economics of agglomeration or economics of a scale. By the way, for which we need certain degree of density, at least something like more than 100 inhabitants per hectare, altogether with the rest of the other 5 components of the formula. And we know that now we are building at a rate of 50 inhabitants per hectare in general. Therefore, we already begin with a huge problem, which is that what is fashionable, what is acceptable, it's a low density, which is not compatible with the economies of agglomeration. Okay. Then the second outcome of good urbanization is again the diminishing per capita cost of urban services. And we know that we can achieve diminished cost of urban services, mainly, drainage, streets, maintenance, green zones, and whatever you want to, or amenities, schools and hospitals and these kind of things, if we have also a certain degree of density, which again, it's around 100 and 200 inhabitants per square kilometer, or per hectare, sorry, per hectare, not a square kilometer, per hectare. That translates to a 10,000 to 20,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. Therefore, without reaching these kind of figures, we are not obtaining the diminishing costs of urban basic services. Per capita costs, don't be confused. Per capita cost of basic urban services. Therefore, of course, we still have another component related to that, is that the proliferation of the gated communities or the specialization urban land for the rich versus the poor. There's not something like less urban than a gated community. Neither if the gated community is to isolate the poor, which is happening in some Asian cities, or if the gated community is to isolate the rich, the very rich ones. The fact that we are rebuilding frontiers inside the city through the means of the gated community, it's the failure, the total failure of modern urbanization. It's the proof of the failure. It's the physical proof of the failure of modern urbanization. And I think that this is something that require from our side a deep thought, thinking, a deep, proper thinking of what are the roots of these derivatives. Why we are behaving like that? Why this kind of urban models are re-emerging in our modern society? I am an optimist, though, and I am proposing this kind of challenge of urbanization because I think that there's room for writing a new social contract, and there is room, therefore, for a new, dignified urbanization process with due functional and social integration. Only we need to dream for that. We need to foresee that, because even if we don't foresee it, it will never will happen. Therefore, I think that we have the obligation to dream for this kind of new urban models, which make possible to have a manageable compactness, well-designed compactness, which provide economies of agglomeration and diminishing cost of basic services, and it's able to generate an urban fabric able to generate social mix. And this is my optimistic future of urbanization view that requires changing quite a number of paradigms and changing quite a degree of what we are doing now currently in urbanization, both in the developed and in the developing world. I will stop here because I would like very much to engage in a conversation and questioning and answers from your side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was really, really, really interesting. If any people have any questions, you can write them down in the chat and I'll read them out. Or if you have any urgent questions you'd like to say, you can also put up your hand and speak. While that happens, I guess so what would be your advice for young urbanists starting now?
Okay, to understand the multifaceted condition of urbanization. You need to understand that urbanization is a socio-political and technical exercise. Politics are very important in urbanization because a lot of money is being moved through urbanization. Then a lot of power is being affected by urbanization. Then you need to understand the sources of social power and the means and ways of governing and conducting the strength that the economic power has, which in many cases it's very much. And then, of course, there's more technical aspects, especially, for example, the relationship with the public space and the built space and its relationship. It's the provision, but also the frontier between the public space and the built space, and all what it's already usually in the curriculum or on the syllabus of the schools. But I would say that in general, what is lacking a little bit in the curriculum of the architecture schools is the political science, the intricacies, the economical intricacies, and the legislative and regulatory intricacies, which are usually not addressed in many of the. I don't talk about the reading school because I'm sure that you are doing all that. But in general, I consider that it's a need for more deep understanding of these social, economic, legal, and political aspects of urbanization.
Thank you. And then a continuation to that, like what skills like do these urbanists need in the future? Like,
yes, you need to understand all these conditions in order to be creative enough to be, able to produce solutions that fits the requirement. Architecture has been traditionally in the frontier of art and science. In the middle, near in the no land space between science and art. And I think that that needs to be complemented. That needs to be so also, because the artistic capacity of finding a physical solution, it's something that it's very plastic. It's something that some people have and others don't have. And no question about that. But apart from that, also you need to understand the social political aspects.
no, yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the art and science is definitely, you have to be able to translate what you mean from science with your art.
Yeah.
So your background as a doctor, your research in epidemiology, when did you start realizing the link between that and architecture and its impact on public health?
Well, that was related to the urban plan of the 19th century, the hygienistic movement. All the architecture, all the urban planning of the mid 1930 to the modern movement of Corbusier at the beginning of the 20s, these 70 or 80 years, they were dominated by the hygienistic urban movement, which was providing sanitation, open spaces, clear streets, ventilation, all the things that were discovered on the 50s, 1850s, with the microbial theory as the origin of illnesses. Before the microbial theory of the origins of many urban illnesses like typhus or cholera or others, even tuberculosis, or there was no clear understanding of what was in the origin of illnesses. When this origin was established, then immediately new urbanists came, like Hoffman in Paris, or Cerdà in Barcelona, or Snow in London, and in many places, to advocate for a proper new kind of urbanization with public amenities and basic provision of public space for urban basic services. This was the revolution of the 1850s, and this was accepted by the wealthy classes because even for the wealthy, it was important to realize that you need a hygienistic urbanization. In the city, in London, the wealthy classes they were protected only if everybody was protected, you know. Therefore, it was for interest of the wealthy that the poor were saying. And this is something that now is repeating with the COVID. Huh?
Yeah.
There's only with the general vaccination of everybody, with now it's called herd immunity, that the rich will be protected. Then is on the interest of the rich that the poor are vaccinated. We are repeating again the same paradigm of the mid 800s. It's a historical lesson.
Yeah. I mean, additionally, the rich also now have the ability to just leave and go to their own private islands.
No, that's what happens even in the 80s, where the rich were building their estate homes in the rural areas. But at the end, they missed the life of the social life of the city, and they needed to return to the city because the city was producing these economies of agglomeration that also they were productive for the rich. Nothing new under the skies. Even that it's repeated. And now, if you are looking at the state of the wealthy estates of the 18th century nobility, most of them are bankrupt. And this is another lesson to be noted. There's no solution in a kind of romantic neo-ruralization of the current society. This is why I am totally against the renewal of a sprawl. We have gone already through this kind of mistakes. And not once, several times. Not once, not just in the mid-80s. Also, in mistakes and done in America mainly after the 50s, and the suburbanization of the cities, etc. This is why I think the serious intellectual contribution of urbanists in the current challenges should be present and active and militant in a way. The problem is that market is selling better the low density areas than the moderate density areas. But this is not a good solution neither for the poor or for the middle classes.
Okay, great. So we have a question from Darren. I guess I'm going to read it if you don't want to say it. So how can we as architects and future architects respond to the many challenges from politics and urbanism? So such as politics and urbanism.
I would like to say that becoming militants of the wood urbanization. We are seeing now in architecture, of course, architecture has had always the moral dilemma of dealing with the owner of the land, dealing with the proprietor, with the landlord. And the temptation, it's always for the sake of the ability to generate new architecture work, you accept unreasonable or unsocial proposals. And this is a moral dilemma that you need to deal with in your intimate moral or ethical stance. It's not easy, but This is not an easy issue. Huh? It's a difficult one, but we hope, we hope that we are going to be able, at least in Europe, to rebuild this kind of social capital that is needed in order to build a good society. That individualism, autocracy, populism, authoritarianism, etc., is not going to win the battle. And that democracy, which its due reforms, it's going to succeed. But and this is always a fight. This is not something that is provided by free of charge. We need to fight for this kind of social endeavor or social future. And there are many temptations to bypass and to, but anyway, in our own stance, ethical stance or moral stance is where we need to address these issues.
Great, thank you. So another question from Carolina. How do you think the use and design of public space might change in the post-pandemic world, and how can architects contribute to the debate and the changing face of the public space?
Well, I think that this is a huge relevant question, because one of the most difficult issues is how to address this public space. The problem, the public space is not a special problem in low density areas. But the issue is that we are looking for middle densities between 100 and 200 inhabitants per square hectare. Then the public space, it becomes an issue where it should be designed for this kind of urban fabric. Then this is where the school has a lot to say. If you have an area of 5,000 inhabitants per square per kilometer, don't worry about public space. You will have enough gardens and public space. Don't worry. Just planting trees, it's enough. The public space, it became something difficult when you are over 100 inhabitants per square kilometer, and you need to design urban public space at a scale which is near to the people. All this idea of the 15 minutes city where you need to be able to walk to a green or an open space which is nearby. And here is where the fight for the buildable land it's becoming tough. And developers, they tend to force the dialogue between architecture, open space, and buildable space. And then it's very easy to build public space, more or less, in the low density. But the issue is that we need to provide a balanced distribution of public space in a dense area, not in a sprawl area. And this is what you should be talking with your professors at the classes, so, at the seminars, and how we are achieving convenient public space, proximity public space. In Manhattan, the solution only was possible to be addressed through the Central Park. But, the Central Park was a huge revolution, was a huge action, which was achieved at once by a very drastic fight. But this is not the kind of normal solutions that you should aim at. You should aim at a more local solution. Although, of course, the Central Park is something that, of course, they should protect, at all, because it's the real, healthy area or respiratory system of Manhattan. By the way, you can only build 11 billion floor area in the Midtown now, nearby the Penn Station, thanks that you have a new movement which is based on the high rise, the recovery of some new open spaces, and at the end, because you have Central Park.
Yeah.
And fortunately enough, nobody's advocating for 11 million square meters of new floor in the Central Park, because they will be, put in prison. The one who dare to advocate for that.
So how would we create more green spaces and for housing in central cities? Because the last time that was really possible was in London, was after the Blitz, when so much was destroyed, and then we were able to construct from new in central London, because that's not possible really nowadays.
No. I don't agree with this fatalistic view of urbanization. I think that we need to do the effort of rebuilding new or decaying zones of the urban fabric. By the way, more or less, the buildings for the London Olympics, the urban areas of the coming out of the urban Olympics, were more or less in the good direction. I think that the proposals of Richard Rogers went in the proper direction. The refurbishment of the city should be done in this sense. Only that, as a criticism of Canary Rath, it should be based on a more mixed use formula, where the residential is mixed with economic floor and with amenities floor, not just economic floor, not more central business districts without residential areas, a mixed urban fabric. But all the renewal areas, all the decaying districts should be reprogrammed, replanned with this new formula in mind, on mind. And there are always places to be considered. Don't think that the city is finished. The city is never finished. Every city always goes through a process of rebuilding. Even the London that you are seeing today with these high rises, just 30 years ago was inexistent. Why there has not been more residential area in those high rises, instead of specializing all of them in business activity? Then don't concede to the idea that the city is already finished.
Yeah.
No, this is a political issue. is not a fatality. The urbanization is not a fatality. The way to change the urbanization is through politics, not through, any other technocratic arrangements.
The next question actually deals with this. Is like, if one of the essential routes for change is through politics, the government, and legislation, but the issue is that our generation has lost currency with the government. Really, we've just lost the trust with them. How can us young urbanists engage with the government? How can the government engage with us?
Well, this is the current issue. This is the crisis that we are suffering. This is the crisis of the liberal democracy. This is the challenge that urbanization is facing. And this is what I was trying to say in my 30 minutes of lecture, that the real problem is not technical or technological. The real problem is politics. And especially in urbanization, urban politics. Then I don't know. I would like to see the mayor of London more active in these debates, not less worried about infrastructures and more worried about urban form and about urban mixtures. But also, I would like to see the urban schools more dependent of adequate compactness and density, and less obfuscated by, single house design. And careful. I would like to see the militants of the environmental movement more interested in social sustainability altogether with environmental sustainability. It's not just a question of greening. I dare to say that is not even a question. The main question is not greening anymore. The big question is social sustainability. It's how we pay. How are we going to pay for social sustainability? Because if we are talking only about environmental sustainability, there's a quick solution for environmental sustainability, which is a sprawl, green sprawl. But this only benefits the rich. Therefore, even in your school, inside the schools, you need to focus the debates.
Yeah.
And you need to take part you need to choose in your sites you are, because, I'm a lot of people is talking about wooden houses or, about sustainable materials. Okay, that is very good. But the main problem of urban sustainability is a sprawl. Because a sprawl at the end is favoring the rich, because only the rich can buy the public amenities for themselves and to bring the public facilities to their premises. The poor people needs to make use of the public utilities, the public amenities. And the state can only pay the public amenities in a dense area, because otherwise it's an unpayable service.
Yeah.
And of course, there's another underlying lesson under that. And this is the taxes. We cannot go on saying that the welfare state it's useless and it's very expensive, it's not functional, and that the solution is to diminish taxes. No, the solution is to pay the taxes needed for a well-managed and well-functioning welfare state, not a bureaucratic and inefficient welfare state. Then there's a lot of reforms that are needed to be introduced in the future of society. There's not only one, and now we have the paradigm of the environmental sustainability, which is very good, because everybody agree, poor and rich, we agree that the planet is only one and that we are in the same boat. I think that this has already gained the battle, the ideological battle. It will last more or less, but we are going to save environmentally the planet, I think. We are going to be able to live, in your lifespan, you are going to see a carbon, more or less carbon-free world. But what is not clear that we are addressing is the social sustainability. We are not addressing the issue of living together in the same place, not in a gated community, the poor and the rich.
Yeah.
And this needs the new social contract. And this needs a new tax system, which needs to be based in environmental taxes or in consumption taxes. We are going to see, but not without taxation, because this is impossible. And what is impossible, it's impossible. We cannot have a welfare state free of taxes. But on the part of the welfare state provision, we need to demonstrate that we spend the money efficiently, that we are not, just spending the money for the sake of spending the money. Yeah. It's a complex rebalancing of the issues.
Yeah. Great.
And the problem now is that the governments are seen as infiltrated by big corporations and with huge degree of corruption.
Yeah.
If you look at the films and if you look at the series in the TV, you always deal with corruption, and illegal activities, illegal enrichment of people. This is the kind of food, intellectual food, that we are receiving every day. And we need to understand from our behavioral knowledge that we humans are animals that a little bit rational, but mainly emotional. And a lot of our ideas enter our minds through irrational procedures or mechanisms. Then this is another component of the current challenge. We need to be protected about overwhelming dosification of irrationality and overwhelming doses of fake news. All that is the current challenge, even in urbanization.
Yeah.
We are not free for the issues affecting the modern world. We are in the modern world.
Yeah.
We form part of it. We are not, although we are studying architecture, we are not isolated from the problems of the modern society, if you allow me.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have enough time for more questions. The next question is from Penelope. So, in terms of the dialogue for a new social contract, how does the social media-led tribalization of politics and discourse affect our ability to collectively imagine urban public spaces where we all come together and tolerate contradiction?
In a horrible and dreadful manner. It's awful, the power that the new social media has to tribalize our reasoning. Because, instead of favoring the rationalization of problems and the reaching of consensus, the new social media, the immediacy of the new social media, what is favoring is the single phrase, the meme that says everything in a single statement, the simplification of our social undergoing. It's easier to think that this chap is good or bad, that this solution is either also positive or negative. Yeah? This simplification and is providing radicalization, which is food for authoritarian government. This is ammunition for authoritarian solutions, because under authoritarian solutions, at least we have the sense that somebody's in charge. And in the tribe, it's very important to have confidence that somebody's in charge. And at the end, he is strong enough to take the decision. And I am not need to worry about the decision and how the decision or the solution is. This is the trap, I say in English, you say, that the modern social media is conducing us to. And it's very unfortunate. There's only a period of history at the beginning of the 18th century with the proliferation of pamphlets, where under the sake of freedom of speech, it was a kind of lack of responsibility of the social media or the communication apparatus. It was only after the libel, the legislation against libel, and this kind of controls were introduced later on, that something like that was controlled. But I remember the cartoons of the beginning of the 18th century and 19th century. They were really aggressive. The portraying of the people were dramatic. And now the insults and also again are emerging free of charge. And probably in this new social contract, something should be said about the against libel, but also something should be said about against impunity, against dirty money, against fiscal paradises, against all these sources of dirty money. Then the question is that in this social contract we need to address the corruption or the bad uses in every sense, not only in one sense, in both sense. But now even the state is using the black money circuit to pay for illegal, activities, espionage and these kind of things. Therefore, we need to build up the new consensus.
Yeah. So the next question from Helen, I think we've kind of already answered this, is more about the urbanism and how can we integrate your idea of that into our existing cities, but you've already talked about that when I asked about how it will be possible. So the next one, I think, relating.
But the most important point that I am trying to pass to you is that we need to appreciate density.
Yeah.
Because you will see that everybody agrees with some kind of recovery of the density, but when you scratch a little bit on the surface, you will see that nobody is in agreement, in fact. That the NIMBYs are always there saying, okay, we need to re-densify the city, but not in my neighborhood. In your next professional stance, you will find that everybody agrees in theory in re-densification, but nobody really wants to live in a dense area.
Yeah.
And here, what is needed, it's a very fantastic and good architecture and urbanism. Because the only way to make density palatable is through good architecture.
Yeah. I definitely agree.
And this is your biggest challenge.
Yeah. Definitely a challenge for our generation.
Yes, because again, I repeat, it's very easy to design nice houses in a garden. And it's very easy to put a swimming pool and plant some trees. This, even without architects, can be done.
Yeah.
But proper palatable compactness, it's very difficult. Try yourself to design a neighborhood of 15,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. Try yourself to draw. I am going to put you a task as a try to design a 3 square urban area of 15,000 inhabitants per square kilometer with a mixed fabric, residential, economic floor, and amenities, and 50% public space, of which 30% of the public space being streets and plazas, and the 20% being green space.
I mean, a good example of that would be the Barbican, because that has a population of 250 people per square acre, and that has been a success. The only issue is that it was mainly targeted for wealthier people.
Well, this is a huge problem. Then you are not solved the problem.
Yeah. The social issue, yeah.
Yeah, we need to address the 5 questions, not only one. You cannot miss a single one.
So going back to the thing about social media and all that, so Oliver just said maybe perhaps students should only really consider a 5,000 words or excess. I think it's more of a a joke, say that maybe the students, when reading text, should only consider of text with more than 5,000 words.
Yes, yes, it's forbidden to learn or to swallow memes of less than 3,000, let's say 3,000 words.
Okay, 3,000. Start at 3,000. Yeah.
Alex, I think
with proper criticism, auto-criticism. Because, you know, we are kind of losing with this fashion for empathy. Now it seems that we need empathy for everything. You know, it seems that we are suffering as much that we need immediately to feel empathically and to be treated empathically. Come on, please. We need to recover criticism. Because we are going to learn not from excesses of empathy, we are going to learn from criticism. Come on, you know, the kids, you know, newborns need empathy, and you know, adolescents they need empathy. But adults, what we need is criticism, because we have already been raised under too much empathy.
Yeah.
In a way, there's a lot of spoiled people, eh?
Yeah. That's definitely what we're going through architecture, a lot of criticism. Anyway,
yes, but you know, serious criticism, not superficial one.
Great. Well, Darren, would you like to finish things off?
Yes, thank you, Alex, for chairing the questions. I would just like to thank Dr. Clos for a quite remarkable talk this evening and a fantastic discussion afterwards. I think it's really kind of opened up many of us in terms of what we need to be doing as teachers, as architects, as future architects. So I'd just like to thank Dr. Clos for joining us this evening and giving us such an incredibly provocative and a good steer as to where we need to be in terms of the school and all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.